that time of decade again. You know, when the BBC decides to drop 3 Sherlock mini-movies in a 2-week span, and then the show disappears for years on end. Today I'm here to review the 4th series, which concluded yesterday. But before I get to series 4, allow me to provide some context. The first series was a surprisingly entertaining origin story, though not without its faults. I gave that series a B. The second series gave us 3 thrilling episodes, with the Reichenbach Fall being some of the greatest television I've ever seen. The series overall is an A-. The third series saw Sherlock become too full of itself, buying into its own hype and choosing cheap drama over genuine mystery. Overall, a B-. And finally, The Abominable Bride last year was an enjoyable but unremarkable holdover until this year's set of episodes, C+. The narrative entering this season, and I'm not talking about within the show, I'm talking about the show itself, was could the show recapture the glory it saw in seasons 1 and 2 before going off the rails a bit in season 3 and with last year's special? Spoiler alert, no it couldn't.
Something's coming. Maybe it's Moriarty.
Isn't this me?
Maybe it's not.
Let's start with the 6 Thatchers, and was anyone else ticked off that in the opening 5 minutes it completely erased any consequences of Sherlock murdering Magnuson at the end of his last vow? For a series that was promised to bring consequences into the fold, this was not a good start. The 6 Thatchers starts at full throttle. It's too frantic, the pacing is off, and there's too much stylistic directing going on here. There's too much technology being displayed on the screen, and while this has been a core element of Sherlock since the beginning, it was used more sparingly before, not basically every second now. I think a prime example is the whole sequence with the dog. The dog just, Toby, I think the dog's name was. For starters, that sequence was not only narratively pointless, but stylistically jarring. They hype up Moriarty a lot in the first 30 minutes, name-dropping him seemingly whenever possible, setting him up as a big threat, maybe not in this episode, but at some point during the season. Since when has Sherlock been a master of hand-to-hand combat? Alright, fine, but that doesn't count. The second half of this episode turns into a James Bond-style action thriller centered around Mary Watson, but it's a story based completely off plot reveals on Mary's hidden past rather than any genuine detective work from Sherlock himself. And in case you have forgotten, this is supposed to be a mystery detective show. Unfortunately, Mary becomes more of a plot device than a character, and while she did become a plot device in his last vow, at least there she was shrouded in mystery. Here she just serves as a function of where the plot wants to go. This entire story is designed just to get to a place where Mary Watson can take a bullet for Sherlock. It's only designed so Mary can die. Watson arrives just in the nick of time to say goodbye to Mary. Isn't he an army doctor? You know, he didn't exactly try to save Mary at all. Mary's death lacks an emotional impact here thanks to John's interactions with the redhead on the bus, which we will get to later. Additionally, John blaming Mary's death on Sherlock felt off. After all, it was Mary who's lied to the both of them time and time and time again. So, isn't Mary responsible for Mary's own death? I really don't see how it is Sherlock's. I was fully expecting Mary to die this series, but I was surprised it happened so early. I thought it would have been saved for the series finale. Overall, The 6 Thatchers was an entertaining but very shallow story. I give it a B-.
This is the most dangerous, the most despicable human being that I have ever encountered. This monster must be ended.
The lying detective opens up with a shot of a fired smoking gun right over John's body, which immediately sets up more stakes than anything we had in the last episode. This is followed by a meeting of John and his new therapist, and it's a very well-directed scene because we really never get a great shot of the therapist. Even when we see her face, her eyes are masked with reflecting glasses. I was surprised when Amanda Abington actually appeared in this episode. I thought she would have been just gone from the show, but her presence was very justified within this episode. Toby Jones makes a great first impression as the frightening Culverton Smith, but the show telegraphs very early on that he's the villain and basically confirms he's a serial killer 30 minutes in, really taking away any drama in the second and third acts on if It's all in Sherlock's head. We know Culverton is a serial killer, so there's just no tension that Sherlock could possibly be wrong. We never get a good look at Faith in the flashback sequence due to very well done disorienting direction from Nicholas Horan. In fact, I'd say that of the 3 episodes this year, this one was the best directed. I see that Cumberbatch brought his shaky hand skills from Doctor Strange over. I really enjoyed Sherlock and Faith's evening together. It was very relaxed, it was very restrained. I actually bought a possible romantic subplot could happen between them. The uck off visual gag is the second funniest moment from this episode. Culverton Smith's video inserts serving as transitions was a great way of building up his menacing presence throughout the episode until we actually get to meet him face to face with Sherlock. When Sherlock, Watson, and Miss Hudson all gathered at John's psychologist's home is when I first noticed a passing resemblance between the psychologist and Faith. I did pause and rewind the episode to get a better look at Faith's scenes with Sherlock in the present day, and while I noticed some resemblances, I passed it off as a coincidence. I'll admit, I was fooled genuinely, and I will get to that again later. By the way, Miss Hudson stepping out of the Ferrari, I think it was a Ferrari, was the funniest moment of this episode and of these 3 episodes. The fact that Sherlock apparently planned all of this 2 and even 3 weeks in advance, however, I find genuinely insulting to the intelligence of Sherlock's audience. At least in the 6 Thatchers, when Sherlock tracked down Mary, it was via tracking device, not via Sherlock's all-knowing predictive skills, and while he did joke about it, yes, it was just a tracking device, but here he apparently knows what everyone's gonna do weeks in advance. Come on, show. Stop trying to be that clever. It's not even clever, it's just insulting. The mind games and cat and mouse chase between Culverton and Sherlock in the episode's second half were very well written and very well paced, whereas the 6 Thatchers seemed like it was in an endless race to get to the finish. This episode moves at a more nuanced pace. One thing I hold against this episode is that it reuses a concept from His Last Vow, which is Sherlock using drug addiction as a way of tricking his opponent. In the end, Sherlock does get Culverton to try to kill him, which I guess was his plan all along, and John saves the day thanks to plot device Mary and smashing open a door with a fire extinguisher? Seriously? The climactic obstacle in this episode was a locked door? And then Sherlock gets a confession out of Culverton by placing a recording device in John's old cane from back in series 1, based on the assumption that when Sherlock's on his deathbed, John will leave the walking cane as a parting gift because Sherlock pissed off Watson and Watson will leave Sherlock? Again, Sherlock can't know everything. Again, Sherlock being all-knowing and predicting the actions of his friends and enemies 2 to 3 weeks in advance is just awful writing. It was very nice to get an update on Irene Adler, although I do wish the show would have brought back Laura Pulver for a return appearance outside of her nonverbal cameo in the wedding episode. Which brings us to the twist ending of the episode, where the redhead on the bus, John's new psychologist, and the fake Faith were all one person all along, Euros Holmes. My first thought when watching this twist was, really? A secret insane sister? That's what you're going with? Fine, whatever, let's see how it plays out. But upon reflection, I was impressed with the twist thanks to the acting of C.M. Brooke, who convincingly played 3 separate characters in these 2 episodes. Even though it was a bit melodramatic, I decided to hold my opinion on the twist until we see how it paid off. The lying detective did not have much mystery, and Sherlock's deductive skills were very overpowered, but the slow burn cat and mouse game between Sherlock and Culverton made up for most of the shortcomings. I give this episode a B.
Every choice you've ever made, every path you've ever taken, the man you are today is your memory of Euros.
I know this is difficult, but you've got to keep it together.
And finally, we move on to the final problem. God, I hated this episode. Oh my God, I hated this episode. Why? Why did this episode have to suck as much as it did? Oh wow, my hair. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go fix that. Let's start off with the not really a dream sequence where Mycroft is plagued by bleeding paintings, a clown, a scary little girl. But no, it's just a ruse that Sherlock set up. How did Sherlock get the paintings to bleed? Come on. Again, we're not stupid as an audience. For a show 5 years ago that was grounded in realism, this absurdity just won't fly. So Mycroft goes to 221B, where he tells John and Sherlock that Sherlock has blocked out memories of Euros from their childhood, to which I just rolled my eyes, but I was thinking, okay, we still have 70 more minutes, let's see where this goes. And then Euros drones a grenade into 221B and it blows up the place, and the special effect of John and Sherlock jumping out the window was abysmal. So we go to the island of Sharon Ford, where Euros just has brainwashed all the employees just by talking to them. And she planned all this out 5 years ago by colluding with Moriarty. Oh yeah, and by the way, there's a plane that's gonna crash with a little girl on it and everyone's passed out because I guess this episode needed more story to tell. So Euros locks up Sherlock, Mycroft, John, and a minor character who's about to be killed in a cell and makes them go through a series of rigorous tests which involve a lot of people dying pointlessly. We do get a good scene, I'll say, where Sherlock is forced to confront Molly Hooper over the phone over her feelings for him. It's a very well acted scene between both Benedict Cumberbatch and Molly Hooper's actress, Louise Brayley? I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Molly really hasn't had much to do over the past 2 series, so it's nice to see her get some dedicated screen time here, a scene longer than 1 minute. The next game involves Sherlock needing to kill either Watson or his brother Mycroft, and this is probably, I think, the best scene of this episode, where Mycroft convinces Sherlock to kill him by pretending to convince Sherlock to kill John. After Sherlock threatens to kill himself instead, all 3 of them are drugged, Watson is locked up in a well, Sherlock wakes up in front of his home and is forced to complete one last challenge. It's here that we learn that Sherlock's beloved Redbeard was actually his childhood friend who Euros murdered. And it's these repressed, traumatic childhood memories that have resulted in Sherlock becoming the man he is today. Oh, and the girl on the plane? Yeah, that's not really a thing. Euros ends up going back to her prison, everything is fine and dandy, and the episode ends all giddy and happy and without the consequences that we were promised from this series of Sherlock. Yes, Mary is dead, but that's only a consequence of her own actions, nothing to do with Sherlock. And the much hyped return of Moriarty turned out to be one scene about 5 minutes long and a couple video inserts here and there. Of course, Moriarty was never going to come back from the dead, but you had been hyping up his return or his presence of some sort for 3 years now. He could have had more influence on the final story rather than just one flashback. In the end, everything that happened in this episode just feels inconsequential. People died, no one cares. The episode ends with one final pre-recorded Mary Watson video that ties everything up so neatly it makes me feel sick. I give the final problem a C minus. C minus.
The roads we walk have demons beneath. And yours have been waiting for a very long time.
If this was in fact the end of Sherlock, it was a pretty poor way to go out. Series 3, for all of its faults, was at least joyful at times, but this series was so dark and so depressing that I think it's going to be hard to rewatch. And for all the promises of consequences, none were to be found. I give Series 4 of Sherlock a C+. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. Please let's have a conversation in the comments below. What did you think of this series? Did you enjoy it more than I did? I hope so, I really do hope people enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already, and stay tuned for more here on TV Junkie.